All right, and we are back. Welcome into another episode of Keeping Up with the New York Jets. Today is Thursday, August 22nd. We are almost done with the preseason, a little bit more than halfway through. We've got two games to discuss since we are doing our first show in 2 weeks. We have got, surprise, surprise, more Haasan Reddick news to discuss as well. We'll try and make it a little bit more positive of a show, but have to talk about that as well. And all news and notes from training camp. Before I bring Teddy in, before we get this show started, follow us on all of our socials at KUWTNYJ. Teddy is at Teddy Huncho. I am at Spring Blake. The YouTube channel is KUWTNYJ as well. If I didn't say that, go give us a look there as well too. If you're watching on there, hit like, hit subscribe. If you're listening on podcasts, hit like, hit subscribe. We appreciate it. Theodore, it's been a couple of weeks. We've been busy, man.
What up?
How you doing?
We've been busy boys. We've been partying our butts off, right?
We really have. Yeah, Teddy
doing
with
good.
some bachelor parties. I went to Vegas with my family for a week. It's been chaotic, and I can't say that we've been as tapped in to Jets preseason action, but we've done a good job still keeping an eye on what's going on in the league. So
Yeah, it was a little tough. I as not a preseason guy by any means, but
Nope.
that first like Jets game, it always hits. And
yeah,
having to watch the games, not live this first 2 weeks has been a little bit of a bummer.
yeah.
But no, I'm juiced. I'm like, we're 2 weeks away. Well, maybe not actually 2 weeks, maybe a little more, but yeah, it's exciting. We're seeing the Jets play football on a TV screen, and that rules super hard. You looking up their first game?
I was
already
gonna say,
forget
well,
what it
yeah,
is.
we're 2 weeks from when this show comes out will be the Chiefs Ravens opener,
All right,
which
good,
is
good.
awesome. So we're just about
Yeah.
2 weeks from that. Did the game-winning field goal in preseason game one like send chills down your spine and be like, let's fucking go?
Yeah, no, no. I will say the Jets do have this like knack to like they love
Electric.
winning preseason games late and like, just really going for it,
Yeah.
which is hilarious.
Yep. Yeah. I think we both are on the same page as far as preseason's game goes. And I think most people are at this point. It's not results that you're really looking for. It's not your star players out there that you're looking for, but it's more just you're picking up on the pieces that we have all been already talking about this entire summer, ever since the draft. How do the new pieces look? How do the rookies look? How do some guys coming back from injury look? So we're going to dive into, I guess, just a couple of the high points of players that we've watched so far. We're going to talk about some of the lowlights, talk about position battles, and then we'll finish things up with Haasan Reddick as well, too. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
before we dive in, I do have a few things I want to say. Through the first 2 weeks of preseason, I think what we all want, right, is we all want to see like this Jets starting offense and see how they work, see how they match. That's just not going to happen in this preseason.
Yeah.
But there's still, you still can glean some things, and whether they're like actually super relevant to what the starters are going to look like or not, I have a few things I want to say. Number
Go
one,
ahead.
Robert Saleh. Let's talk about Robert Saleh for a hot second. Robert Saleh has yet to have an established identity as a head coach, right? It's still kind of a coin flip. He hasn't looked great through his first 3 years, and this is kind of the year that's going to define, like, is he a bad head coach who just can't get things going right on offense, and is just like a purely defensive guy, or will he get it together and show that he can actually be a head coach himself, right? That is still very much a question, and, that's fine. But when it comes to, like, this Jets defense, the past 2 years, the Jets defense has been elite, and you watch the way they play, and they play with like this fire, and they're swarming the ball and finishing plays and all that stuff. And when you watch the Jets backups through 4 quarters of preseason, like those guys all have that same exact fire. Like the first two preseason games, it was just basically the Jets defense just like being awesome, even though it's like guys who are not going to be in the ones and twos of the
Right.
Jets defense, and it just really made me want to just like shout out, like, if there's one thing we know, it's that Robert Saleh can get these defensive guys going, and like, I don't know, just like that that really is what is like that thread hanging on of like, how can this guy not be a great head coach? You
Yeah.
know, and obviously he's got to be more than a DC. He's got to make it work on the offensive end. But just like watching the Jets D line just, dominating these other O lines with the Commanders and the Panthers and just destroying them all day, that was fun. And it just really got me juiced. So I don't know if that's positive or negative, but shout out Robert Saleh as a defensive coach, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing, and you're right. Everybody's question when you have a first-time head coach is, okay, with the full responsibilities of leading an entire organization and being the front end, can you still, hang your hat on what got you there, but then also hone in and focus in on the rest of this team. It goes coaching, management. Even we sit here with Joe Douglas and we're like, he's made a couple of great trades. He drafts really well. Sometimes there are free agent signings that really kind of bite you in the ass, and you're like, then there's some good ones as well too. But you're always kind of like, how do they master every
100%.
part of the job? I don't know. I don't want to be like the most negative person in the world here, but I did hear you say both the Panthers and the Commanders in the same sentence. And
Oh, for
granted,
sure.
you can only play who is in front of you, but I would also say that I think a lot of the ones on both of the offenses for the Panthers and Commanders are probably twos in real day. So then you get the
Yeah, for
twos and it
sure,
all
for
moves
sure.
back. But you're right. It is the energy and the way that the team presents itself on a football field. I'm not
Yeah,
saying that they're
that's my main point is like the
yeah,
drive that they have during these preseason games. It's like you just want that to transfer so bad to even the offense during these preseason games, like whether they're scoring or whatnot, they've shown a little like fire under
yeah,
them. And that's just what you want to see.
of course.
Which does bring me to my next point. Other side of the coin here. Watching the Jets play the Panthers in a preseason game and just winning the game 15-12 with 5 field goals, just not being able to punch it in, really just makes me want to die inside. Like it really
Yeah.
does. Because you just have to be able to score. And whether it's with your ones or your twos or you're playing ones or twos, like you got to be able to punch the ball in. It was something the Jets were horrible at. The Jets ran like 12 plays inside the 5 or something absurd like that last year, like some low crazy number. So yeah, that stresses me out. Nathaniel Hackett calling plays, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That was just like annoying to watch. I'll say that.
I mean, how many times have we watched that over the last few years since we even started this
Hundreds.
show? And then
Hundreds.
you bring in a new offensive coordinator and it's still the same fucking thing last year. Yeah. I mean, granted, we all just keep saying it. Hopefully Aaron Rodgers steps in and it's no
For
longer an
sure.
issue for the Jets. But yeah, that is incredibly frustrating, especially like I said, a team that I think many expect to still be the second to third worst in all of football or in that range, a bottom 3 team in the league this year. And if you wanted to take a look at their strong suit, it'd probably be their offense. And to see that the Jets can't really punch in a touchdown in that game, very frustrating and something that haunts us because we've seen it so much the last few years.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are my general takeaways. Take them as you will.
Yeah.
But just I just get fired up when I watch these things. I'm just like, God damn it, just score.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
all I want.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, hopefully we get a few touchdowns here in this Giants preseason
Yeah.
game. And Monday Night Football, September 9th, we punch in a bunch against the 49ers.
I am counting down the days. I really
a cool game. A cool game. All right, specific players. These two guys, I think we talk about every episode, but as we've continued to see them on the field, there's a lot of great to keep talking about. We said during the draft, I thought Braelon Allen was very good. We have seen through camp, hey, Braelon Allen looks really good. We have now seen him against 2 preseason teams, 2 NFL teams, and he has still looked good. First off, it just still amazes me every day when you see a new picture out there or you see him making these, trucks through defenders, just how big of a human being he is. He's built like a fucking statue. Through his first 2 preseason games, 5.78 yards per carry, limited touches. I think it's 14 total carries in the first 2 games. So it's, small sample size, but he's got a few highlight plays. Even on the non-highlight plays, you're seeing exactly what you saw at Wisconsin. Ball security, always fighting through defenders to get a few extra yards. That's incredibly impressive. And it's not to say that, I think, he'll step in against the Cowboys defense or the 49ers defense and he's like a starting caliber running back day one, but you're seeing a lot of the things that made him so successful at Wisconsin, which made him, a mid-round pick here for the Jets as well, too. I love what we're seeing from Braelon Allen, and it's just like the duo that is being formed here between him and Brees has a ton of potential.
I think it's been an awesome, like the first two preseason games were an awesome look at both sides of Braelon Allen, I guess.
Hmm.
Week one, he's 6 for 54, 9 yards a carry. He
Yeah,
has a few just like big breakout runs, 24 long. Um, like just to be able to see that explosiveness from a guy that, is kind of seen as a bruiser and
bruiser.
a between the tackles guy. He just looked outstanding. He's looked like an NFL player from day one. Only 20 years old. Similar, I think Brees was
Crazy.
20 when he was a rookie. Like these are young
Yeah,
guys. These are
kind of
guys
the youngest guy in
7 years
football right
younger than
now.
Blake and I.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
um, yeah, and then you look at the next game, stats aren't as flashy. He's 6 for 29, or excuse me, 8 for 27, 3.4 yards a carry. But you're watching that game, and I mean, there was one sequence where literally the Jets just first down, they ran it, gained 4 yards. Second down, they ran it, gained 4 yards. Third down, they ran it, gained 3 yards. Like that type of identity and that type of ability to just like be a bruiser and just chip away at a defense. Braelon Allen and Brees Hall together, like they are going to be one of, if not the best running back duo in football this year. Like they really will, because
Yeah.
Brees Hall is an otherworldly talent, and then this guy is right there. Like Braelon Allen is talented as hell. He's good enough to, at least be a guy in this league, if not a starting caliber guy. And he reminds me a lot of Brees, where like right from the jump with Brees, you're like, oh, this guy's going to be electric. Like that's how I feel about Braelon Allen. So, he was one of our most exciting things to watch when we talked about it. He has not disappointed. Really, really excited to see him out there.
It's a lofty comparison, but his running style just like looks like Derrick Henry. Just and you match the size as
Yeah.
well too, and the way he works between the tackles, the patience, the pop as well too. Like Derrick Henry, you might think of him as just your bruiser, but he also popped off that 98-yard
Hmm.
touchdown once. Like he does have that top end speed when he gets separation. So I totally agree, and it brings me to this other thought about just the Jets offense in general. It's like if Brees and Braylon are, say, even a top five rushing duo in the league. So we have a top five rushing offense behind a strong offensive line and two running backs that really just you can rely on. And if the Jets are a run first offense, that's the first time that's ever happened in Aaron Rodgers' career. There's been one time in the last decade that he's had a top 10 rushing attack alongside him. It was in 2020, and the Packers made the NFC title game. They had a chance to beat the Buccaneers, and they kicked a field goal down 8. Like it's that one moment that everybody kind of picks on Matt LaFleur for. They had a chance to get to the Super Bowl. They had a chance to go for it, and they didn't. But that was the last time that Aaron Rodgers had a top 10 rush attack with him. And again, that's recent, but you also go back the time before that, it was all the way back in 2013. So you're talking about one time over the last 11 years that Aaron Rodgers has had a top 10 rush attack, and it got him to the NFC Championship game. And oh, by the way, the Packers defense that year was not special at all. So to me, I keep wrapping my head around like, okay, I'm like, what does this team really remind me of? And it's almost like the Broncos, their final Super Bowl year with Peyton Manning, where it's like you have a top three defense, you have a quarterback that is aging, and you have a run attack that is top five in football. And it worked because you had a quarterback that was still smart with the football. He didn't have the arm talent. And here's the thing, Aaron Rodgers is not what Peyton Manning was at that stage in his career. He's got way more pop in his arm still. He's got the brains that Peyton Manning does as well too. I kind of likened it to, I was trying to think of like a good sports comparison for it. And it's like what you need out of Aaron Rodgers this year is kind of what you need out of your aging starting pitcher, who has been around the league for 15 years. The first 12, he's just got that heater that he blows by everybody. And what keeps that guy elite at his late ages when he doesn't have the velocity anymore, it's the placement, it's the timing, it's the off-speed pitches, it's the mind games that you play with the defense. Aaron Rodgers off play action is one of the deadliest quarterbacks of all time. And when you have a defense that is going to be sunk in because Brees or Braylon are running for 5 yards a carry, Aaron Rodgers is going to steal everybody's lunch money on the back end. So it just like I keep buying myself more and more into this season for the Jets as we get closer. The biggest reason is the fact that if you have a stable of running backs here in Breece and Braelon Allen, life may not have been ever easier for Aaron Rodgers at quarterback here than it could be this season.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you just look at like last season for an example where it really did feel like, when you had to take Brees out, you were losing talent.
Oh yeah.
You were losing skill at that running
Oh,
back
Dalvin
position. And
Cook?
here it seems like a less of a jump. Yeah, RIP. And I just want to throw out, just real quick, like I think people have this thought like, well, two running backs aren't going to be great, you know what I mean, and one offense. But it's more common than you think. I mean, you look at the top duos last year, David Montgomery with 1,000 yards, Jahmyr Gibbs 945 right there. Raheem Mostert with right over 1,000 yards, Devon Achane with 800, Najee with over 1,000, Jalen Warren with 780, Josh Jacobs with 800, AJ Dillon with 600. Like it is very, very much in the realm of possibility that these two combine for 1,700 yards, and maybe even more than that. And that will just open so much up. And then add in just real quick, I don't want to completely go away from these two guys, but then you have Isaiah Davis, who's the 5th-round pick, who's looking great and looking like an NFL player and able to give you some pop, especially in the passing game. You look at that's really all I want to talk about. Izzy Abanikon is
Yeah, I
also
was gonna
there.
say
But Isaiah Davis is the guy I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
4 for 33 against the Commanders in the passing game. 4 for 8 running the ball, but he can still jump in there and give you a little bit of pop. So yeah, this running back room is really coming together. I think our top 3 guys are all awesome. That was a huge takeaway for me in preseason.
And I know we all look at the Jets and we look at the talent of Breece Hall and we're like, well, we should make him the leading rusher in football. We should make sure that he is the feature of this offense. And he very well could be. He is that type of talent where if you look at the end of the year, he could be a top 3, 4 rusher in the league. But also, if you can save him and have another guy in there, like, I'm sorry, it's not great for your fantasy team. I know it won't do you great with all your betting props.
There's plenty
but
to go around.
When you want to make it to the divisional round, the AFC Championship round, and you have a bell cow, it makes it a little bit easier when you've got that second guy in there, especially for the gross stuff. Like Braelon Allen's body is built like a monster truck. I would much rather put him out there on those short yardage situations, make life a little bit easier for Breece. We always talk about making life easier for Aaron Rodgers here and what this rush attack too. The other two can work off each other great. And it's not like Braelon Allen has, stone hands and he just can't catch the football. Like you can use them both out there very creatively. So I'm all the way in on this rush game. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if we get halfway through the season and we're like, okay, Aaron Rodgers has been really good for us and the passing game has been solid, but we're winning football games because of the ability to take a 14-10 lead in the halftime and just run the ball, or take a 21-10 lead and just like run the ball out in the second half and not let defense or opposing offenses get the chance to creep back in. Like to me, that's the motto for success here for this team.
Going back just our ability to, score in the red zone, like having a strong running game in the red zone is key to that. Getting yourself on a 2nd and 3 from the 15 really it does open up the playbook opposed to when you're just trying to, pass in these short little scenarios. Like it just is everything for this team. Obviously the O-line needs to be great as well.
Yes.
Which I think brings us into what we're going to talk about next. But just from the talent at RB, things are looking great in that regard.
And even in that red zone, real quick, the highlight reel alone on Aaron Rodgers' play fakes on play actions, he's like the best to ever do it. So it's just like when you get defenses for that 12th play on the drive and it's been 9 runs, 3 passes, and all of a sudden you fake a handoff to Braelon in the middle, and all of a sudden you've got Conklin sinking over the middle of the, into the end zone. You're going to have a fully fledged offense here that can attack you in so many different ways. So very exciting to see that. Like you mentioned, the offensive line is the other part of that. I think one of the biggest things that I spoke about wanting to see coming into training camp is something that we finally started to get to see last week. The Jets started playing Olu Fashanu at right tackle. Gave him a few games in there at practice, had him start out there in the Panthers game as well too. Did have a false start, did have a holding penalty in the game, but all in all, looked pretty solid there at right tackle and just goes to further kind of what like we're talking about with the running game. Now we can talk about with the offensive line. Like these insurance plans for the Jets were not there last year. And granted, the biggest insurance plan you could have is a solid backup quarterback, and hopefully Tyrod Taylor could be that at the end of the day, and it definitely is better than what they had last year. But offensive line, running back, these insurance plans here, like if Brees went down last year, the options behind him were going to be terrible. When the offensive line went down last year, the offensive line was terrible. These are a couple of guys here, Olu specifically now that we're talking about, that you're like, okay, we have at least a quality piece here that could be starting, but he's on our bench right now. So tell me about what you've thought about Olu so far and his
Yeah.
growth through training camp.
I honestly love the way that this is working out for him specifically, just like building his career, and just the way the Jets have kind of played this. Obviously, taking Olu when you had two starting guys at tackle already, some people at least questioned it, like, hey, you could have got a guy who would start. But for this guy to kind of get that ability to come into the league, have a guy like Tyron Smith, who, he said himself is his role model, the guy he looks at his film, and to be able to just learn and to not have that pressure of starting right away. Like, I think that just opens him up to really like settle into what he's doing. I also really like that this was a guy who was drafted as a left tackle, right? And I think both of us at the beginning of camp were kind of like, I expected him to be getting some reps at right,
Yeah.
because if you would expect that if Morgan Moses goes down, you're going to want to give that nod to Olu opposed to, a Max Mitchell or whoever else. But I like this kind of plan that they had in place where they're like, all right, we're going to start you at left tackle, get your feet under you as an NFL player in practice, in a training camp, and then in the past week or two, they've moved him over to right, started giving him reps, and then let him play that in the preseason game. I just like their like approach with him. It seems like they've at least learned a little from their Mekhi Becton experience. If Olu walked in day one and they say, hey, you're going to be at right tackle, I'm sure Olu's a great guy and probably would be fine with it, but it could cause a rift, right? It could be like, well, what the fuck? I wanted to play left. Now he's getting that ability to play both, to learn both. Yeah, and we were both hoping he would go out there and look awesome. Through 2 games of preseason, he's looked awesome. So that's been great. It's you feel confident about him if one of your tackles goes down, which is something we haven't been able to say the past few years. One of the most important things in football, right? So just the insurance there, it's great for the Jets.
Yeah, and those heavy sets then where you're going to go 6 offensive linemen and that on the right or the left side he can slide in there and be that extra swing tackle. Yeah, he's uber talented. He really is. Like he's a blue chip prospect at left tackle, and I think the plan, well, I guess from the Jets where I see it is like they took the first few weeks and they were like, let's make sure what we've got here at left tackle. And every report, every note has been like, this guy is ready. He's ready to be left tackle. So the Jets got themselves comfortable with him as a left tackle, and then they're like, let's just see. Like we already feel good about him on the left side. Let's see how he does over here because we might need that just as much as we need the left side. Yeah. And so, yeah, as we've continued through camp, he's continuing to shine. And I just can't get over the fact of like, if we were sitting here last year and had these, insurance plans, like I would feel so much more comfortable about the O-line. Like last year we were talking about Mekhi Becton. Quick shout out to starting right guard Mekhi Becton for the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, you heard that correctly. The guy that refused to play right tackle or argued that he would refuse to play right tackle is now a right guard in Philadelphia. Where Blake was right. I'll take my
very good
victory lap there. Yeah, I don't know. It's just awesome to see because we know that Tyron Smith isn't around forever, and we are putting all of our eggs into like the 2024 basket. But we just started off this show with 2 guys that I'm like, I feel great about the future of the Jets with these 2 in fold.
Definitely. While we're on the topic of backup linemen,
yeah,
I do just want to give a shout out to Jets backup guard / center Xavier Newman. Blake and we say Newman a lot. Good name, great name, Xavier Newman. I might get a jersey, a little 65 jersey.
That would be nice.
That would roll.
Yeah, that would.
But Xavier Newman's been a guy who has really just shown up in both preseason games. He has looked good throughout camp, has been playing both guard positions, the center position. I think a huge thing that Blake and I talked about when we were kind of looking at the depth of this line and saying, what's going to happen if someone gets injured on the inside? How confident do we really feel? Seeing Newman go out there, look good. I think he had a 90 PFF rushing grade in the first game. The pass blocking looked good. The ability to play multiple positions, like that just gives you at least some confidence. And hey, if someone goes down, we're not completely screwed. He's a guy who wasn't a lock to make the team, but now it looks like he's going to.
Yeah.
So just wanted to shout him out while we're here talking O-line.
Yeah, you need guys like that, especially. I mean, I'm haunted by the names that were thrown out there at the interior offensive line at different points of last season, and just like the disaster pieces that were Lakin, and just I don't know. It never worked out on the interior last year. There was never like a set combo for a few games. We were like, hey, this looks really awesome. So you're right. I like the starters that we have in place, but it's also nice to know that there's a guy that can swing in at a few different positions, because we knew Olu was going to be the backup tackle on one side or the other. But finding out those guys on the inside, it does give you a little bit more comfort. And again, preseason, hopefully when they step into live action against regular, teams number ones, we feel a little bit better. But yeah, that's all. Is there anything else with the offensive line? I know we want to talk edges. I know we want to talk roster bubble. Should we talk edges last and bring them into the Haasan Reddick situation, since that carries there? Or do you want to go save the roster bubble stuff for last?
No, I guess I don't know. It really doesn't matter to me. I mean, we can talk about just other people, because I mean the edge conversation comes with the Haasan Reddick conversation, so we can save. Yeah, I just really wanted, we're in this period, right? This roster bubble area. There's one preseason game left, Jets versus Giants. It's going to be interesting to see, who ends up making the team, who ends up not making the team. Unlike years prior, there's really not that much flexibility. There's only a handful of spots that are really in question. But we do a Jets podcast. Let's shout out the guys who are looking good and potentially claiming those spots. So Xavier Newman was one. Jared Bernard-Converse, cornerback, he's really solidified himself. He's looked good. He had a good deep pass breakup in the first game. Has been a good player so far. I think the guy, I guess I'll save him for last, Brandon Condrington, a lot of consonants in that name, hard to say. He had 2 big punt returns, or maybe 1 kick return, 1 punt return. Almost scored a touchdown, but just barely, kind of lost his balance, went out of bounds. Could be interesting to see if he makes the team. That's Ben Gibson's role as the punt returner, kick returner, but he's making his case for it, so that'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, those are the big guys who've really dominated so far. I do just want to say Adrian Martinez and Peasley are 2 QBs. Not the best players in the world. They've been electric as hell. They've been running all over. They're definitely had their fair share of missed throws, but they've been exciting to watch. Last roster bubble guy I will talk about before we just get into our edge room as a whole, Takk McKinley. A guy we talked about as a backup D end, has looked super solid through both games, has been getting to the quarterback, getting pressures, at least giving us some positive things to talk about when it comes to our edge unit. But through these first 2 games, I really do think the conversation with edge is, goddamn, let's get Haasan Reddick in here or someone, because I don't really know who I feel confident going in as our, second edge across from Jermaine Johnson. So let's start there.
Yeah. Shout out to all those guys making the rosters. I think where we stand at it, to me, like you said, it's to me this who's starting opposite Jermaine on the early downs, because you just mentioned Takk McKinley. We have seen good and bad and meh from. Wow, my mind just went completely blank. Will McDonald. Thank you. Yes, Will McDonald. We have seen some good flashes. Most recently in the second preseason game, looked pretty solid. A couple of practices as well too, having good days. But the main question has always been, okay, in this doomsday scenario where Haasan Reddick is not suiting up for the Jets on Monday, September 9th against the San Francisco 49ers, how are they going to look on early down situations opposite Jermaine Johnson? And Michael Clemens was the project piece of John Franklin Myers 2.0, where you're just like, yeah, he's that really nice inside guy on pass rush opportunities, but he's also your starting D end against the run. And it just hasn't been there. He's really struggled throughout camp, and it's now leaving us in this situation where, like, at the end of the day, yeah, he was a mid-round pick, and those guys, even first-round picks, are missed at a 50% clip. But also, we have now put ourselves in a position where you do trade away John Franklin Myers because you're like hoping that Clemens can turn into this guy. And now you do have Haasan Reddick asking for a trade and hasn't reported to camp. So now you're in this hole where you're like, we do need somebody here.
Yeah, yeah. Clemens is, he got drafted. He was like a fun story because he's kind of just like a serious guy, got the deep voice, takes himself really seriously, doesn't like to joke around, or kind of does, but like he leans into it a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100% leans into
but he's
it.
like the big scary guy. And all last year I was just very disappointed in how he played. He wasn't a game changer. He didn't, really perform at a high level at all. So then going into this year, we have all this Haasan Reddick drama, and it's like, all right, there's Michael Clemens' name right there, as the starting defensive end across from Jermaine. And you obviously wanted to see Will McDonald gain some weight, and look like he could take that role. That's not what happened. So now you're just really looking at Michael Clemens, and then your next guy is probably Takk McKinley, right? And Michael Clemens seems like I'm here, like some people are saying he might even be on the roster bubble. He might even get cut. So which I don't know how realistic that is, truthfully, but I do think, Takk McKinley, he's 250 pounds. Like, it does kind of seem like our best option at that outside edge. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's great. I'm not saying that's what, the Jets need to be this great defense. Obviously, getting Haasan Reddick in here somehow would be great. But I do think Takk McKinley has shown enough that I certainly will not be surprised if he's the one getting that nod for those early downs, and then you're working in McDonald and things like that. So yeah.
He's earned it. I mean, and he does, like I said, more so than Will McDonald, have the size to be relied on as an outside edge on those early down situations. He's got the best run defense grade of all the edges so far in 2 preseason games, out the 11th best out of 150 edges that have been graded so far in the preseason, substantially better than Clemens, Watts, Will McDonald, or Braden McGregor. And then you take a look in the pass rush win rate, 25%, which is 6th out of all those, and up there with Will McDonald and Braden McGregor so far on the Jets. So yeah, you are looking at a situation now where Clemens is kind of becoming an afterthought, and we're talking about Takk McKinley as a roster bubble. You're talking about a guy that, like, doomsday scenario, as we keep saying, Takk McKinley probably should be the starting edge out there opposite Jermaine Johnson. And look, if he's great, you're like, holy shit, I can't believe we somehow solved this situation and made something out of nothing here. Obviously, you would rather the guy that you gave up a conditional third for to be out there instead. But look, it's not the end of the world if you have a guy out there that oversees expectations and can give a lighter role to Will McDonald too. It's not just the fact that you can rely on him on early down situations, but also now you don't need Will McDonald to be out there all the time. You can put him out there on more of those specialized roles. So yeah, Clemens is making the team still, right? You wouldn't go as far to say Clemens is roster bubble watch, or should we be kind of like keeping our eyes on that as a surprise cut?
Conversation is starting. I don't think it would be guaranteed. And part of me does think, like, if you don't have Reddick come in here, Clemens is at least a guy who's been around, played, you know what I mean? So I would assume that they, in looking at other options, would say, hey, we're going to keep this guy because we know we can at least put him in there, as a rotational piece.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly don't think that Michael Clemens is going to go out there and be the week 1 starter. I think it will most likely be McKinley. I just really don't. I think Clemens was a project when we drafted him. I think he didn't really step up last year. I just don't really expect much from him. So yeah, it's tough, and it really does bring us to that Haasan Reddick conversation, right? Like, we want to get this guy in the building. It's the story that is never ending. We've been talking about it since voluntary OTAs and first week of
Mandatory
June.
minicamp, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant. And yeah, Haasan Reddick has officially asked for a trade from the Jets.
Nice birthday
Not,
wish for me.
yeah, right. Oh, is that
That's
on
what I
August 12th?
wanted.
Yeah, and you know, it doesn't change the whole story, right? He's been in a contract dispute. He's, making moves to try to get the Jets to just get him signed to a deal. But to see that we're at this point of like him demanding a trade publicly, not ideal. That's all. That's what I'll start with. Not ideal.
No, it's always just like that next step of disgruntled athlete. It's like you don't
Yeah.
show up, you say you're not showing up for a new contract, and then it goes further, and you're like, man, they haven't given in yet. Okay, I want a trade. And like within minutes, Joe Douglas has his statement out there, quote, "We have informed Haasan that we will not trade him, that he is expected to be here with his teammates, and that he will continue to be fined per the CBA if he does not report." What's crazy is like that was more than a week ago now. And we're
Yeah.
still here in this situation where I'm sure he still wants to be traded. He still is not showing up to Jets camp. We're now 2 weeks away from, or 2 weeks and some change since they've got the Monday night game, but we're still a little bit a ways away. And yeah, I guess this is the point now where I start to like actually worry and be like, man, is he gonna hold out? Like there is still a lot of time, but
Yeah.
he's given up like what, a couple million now?
I think the numbers are it's over 1.5 for sure. I don't know if it's gotten
Well,
to
because you also
2.
have gotten the
You
second
also have to
preseason game
factor
out
in
of
the
the
half
way.
a million. Yeah. And there was the half a million like extra that
I
they
think he's got to be
maybe it
over
was
two.
300,000 they put in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in this weird space because Blake and I have been pretty consistent with our stance, right? Like Haasan Reddick doesn't really have his only leverage is you guys want me to be there playing.
Yeah.
You don't want me to be sitting on my couch, right?
Right.
But if Reddick's goal is to get another big contract, right? Sitting on the couch all season is just not a viable option, right? Because it's not like this is 2015 Le'Veon Bell, who's, coming off this all-time season as a running back and signs this like Le'Veon Bell was able to sit out an entire season and then get the biggest guaranteed contract for a running back ever, right?
Yeah.
Haasan Reddick, like if Haasan Reddick wants to be paid like $25 million a year, if he sits out a season, that the percentage someone does that is not going to go up, right? It's only going to go down.
And also, the league has changed their like how they handle situations like this. If he sits out for the entire season, he's forfeited his entire salary, and his salary kicks into the following season and is still owned by who?
Sure.
Oh, the Jets. So it's literally just like the fact, like if he sits out the entire season, he's going to make the same amount of money next year playing for the same exact team that is trying to get him to play this year. So like to me, it makes even less sense, because he doesn't have that ability to just be like, now I'm a free agent. No, he will be a Jets edge rusher in 2025, making the same money that he is right now.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point.
It's crazy.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I'm annoyed it's been taking this long. It obviously does get me more worried. But also, part of me is like, we have 2 weeks to go. We have one more preseason game and then another week before we kick off Monday night. Like, just my gut feeling tells me that he's gonna have to give in.
Yeah.
Because what else can you do?
Right.
You know what I mean? But yeah, it's a super interesting situation, and I think what's the most frustrating about it is there's not like this steady stream of news. It's just like we get these little bombs of nothing, and then we just have to like wait. So yeah, it's interesting. I still, I assume that we're going to meet somewhere in the middle, probably closer to the Jets side, where he gets the money converted guaranteed, maybe gets a couple $1 million upgrade. But the Jets are not going to be paying Haasan Reddick $22+ million this year.
No. And what's funny is now like the couple million raise that he'll get, it will just make up for the fines of not showing up to camp, and then he's making the exact same thing. So to me, it truly is. And it's funny that it just happens to be with the Jets. It's just one of the dumber moves I think I've seen a player try and make. Like Jamar Chase right now, Chad Ochocinco went on a podcast or a show and was like, yeah, I think if Jamar doesn't get a new contract before the season, he won't suit up. And it's like, okay, well, in Jamar Chase's side of things, he's the best, if not the second best wide receiver in all of football, a position of extreme importance. He is incredibly young. And yeah, his talent has proved that he is in demand. Like, he has that kind of, like, there's a much better reason to give a 25-year-old Jamar Chase top wide receiver money in his second contract than it is to pay. And he's staying with the same team. He didn't jump from another team. And what makes this situation even more frustrating is that the Patriots didn't give a contract extension to Matthew Judon, who is kind of in the same situation. Now has made more money throughout his career, is a more decorated pass rusher. So he's got like a little bit more career earnings over his years than Haasan Reddick does. But same situation. He's an older guy. The Patriots really aren't on the same timeline with Judon right now. Judon wants one more payday. So what does he do? He gets traded to the Atlanta Falcons. And everybody's expecting that when he shows up in Atlanta, he'll have a new contract because that's the reason he was leaving New England. But then he dropped this gem in a press conference when he showed up in Atlanta. Quote, "The Falcons know nothing about me as a football player or as a man. They know my previous resume. I can't really demand or ask for anything I haven't worked for. I'm going to work for it." Hey, Haasan Reddick, read that. Listen to this. Like, that is insane to me that you have a player in the exact same situation who is just upfront and honest about it. And meanwhile, we've got Haasan Reddick being here like, oh, nope, I'm going to demand a trade from this team I haven't even showed up for because I want more money. And I broke a handshake agreement.
Yeah, I will say I do think I think that he is probably going to get at least a 2-year deal and get some type of, good money. But he's at least saying the right thing, right? Like, he's going in there with good faith, and if he's going to show up, even if he doesn't get a deal done. And just that statement alone, it's like he was aiming it at Haasan Reddick. It really is. The other thing with this whole thing is like there were quotes last week from a couple Jets players. I can't remember exactly who, but one of them's like, yeah, it's not really a distraction. Like, we don't know him. Like, it's not like we're like, man, I'm missing Haasan right now. It's like, we don't even know him. So
who are you, bro?
It just, it builds this like, okay, so let's say he does get there, how's that going to go? And I do, I've said it before. I think if he does show up, I think it's something that, within 3 weeks can easily become water under the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Players are always going to try to understand, hey, you got to do what's best for you. This is a business, do your thing.
Yeah.
But it's just this weird situation of like, you are demanding these things from a team you've never played a snap for. You've been in the building once to sign your contract and then just never showed up again. It's a very odd situation. It's almost like he got traded and then was like, I don't really want to play for the Jets. You know what I mean? Like, so it's odd for sure. It's the never-ending story. I'm dying for it to just be resolved and for him to show up. But at this point, I really don't know how this is going to end.
Yeah, I would have said, like, I think when we first got on about this situation, I would have said that, like, I think maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I thought it was going to be done. I think I said like August 10th.
The first 2 weeks of camp, we both said like,
we laughed at
next week it'll probably be done.
Yeah, we laughed about the situation. And granted, we both still feel the same way. Like, I just truly don't see, because, like, the other thing, if Reddick chose to sit out this entire season and really just stick it to the Jets, and he comes back and he's hoping that the Jets probably just trade him next year, like, he's going to be a year older, making the same salary, probably less productive. Like, he won't get that contract that he's looking for either.
Yeah.
Like, it just isn't going to work. Like, the best situation, we both said this entire time, is for him to ball out on the Jets and let some team out there give him like a Jadeveon Clowney type contract. We're like, hey, congrats on the good season. Come play for a bad team and we'll pay you, high-end money. It's just, I think he's delusional. And like, I don't get it.
Yeah. It also, like, it's so deep. It's like reminiscent of like the Revis holdout, where Revis shows up on like the second to last day of camp and it's just like, hey guys, I'm back. And again, though, it's like Revis is the best cornerback in the NFL. And then you have like Haasan Reddick, who's a good player. But he's not the best edge rusher in the league. He's not like this guy who can demand, and again, like if the Jets had wanted to pay an edge rusher $25 million a year, they probably would have paid Bryce Huff.
Yeah, he's still the second best edge rusher on his own team. Like, I think Jermaine is a better guy than him. So it's just so.
And that's again where I think we've had a lot of conversations about the edge room, and obviously Haasan Reddick will bolster that up. But I do think, like, I don't think it's going to be make or break for this Jets defense that he's out there. I think the
No.
defense is good enough that they can kind of rise to the occasion otherwise. So
Yeah.
again, it's like, what is your leverage? Because if he decides, if he says, I'm not going to play, um, you know, he's basically just hoping that the Jets play 2 games and are like, man, we really need this guy out there, and then cave. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
it's a crazy thing. I'll say it again. I got to expect it gets done before week 1.
Yeah.
But we just got to sit back and wait and see.
I know. It's just funny that this has been the main talking point since training camp started.
Yeah.
And there's been a new twist every week, but then it's like
Yeah.
that one twist and then silence.
It's
Like we
yeah.
still, outside of Rappaport or whoever put it out first, saying that Reddick has told the Jets he requested a trade. That's all we've heard from him, really. Like there's been silence on his end, which is very frustrating about it too.
And the Instagram post in Japan.
That's right. That's right. He was halfway across the world. Though the last thing that also kind of ties in with these roster bubble stuff. One thing I keep thinking about as well too is like across every team there are going to be guys that get cut that the Jets probably like will bring in as edge depth. That like I think there's going to be plenty of teams that say you're a young team and you have this like I don't know 30-year-old edge and you're like, well, we just want to get young at the position, so we're going to keep our guys here and just let this depth piece at edge into free agency. Like this is a scheme that is all across NFL defenses. There are going to be a lot of guys that do not make teams elsewhere that could very well come and fold here. So say that we get surprised by like a Michael Clemens cut, it's probably because they know that there's a guy that they want to bring in somewhere else. So whether it's more depth pieces at edge while we wait for Haasan to come back or to fill in other holes, like that's also, it's almost like its own mini free agency that we forget right before the season. It's never going to be like a guy shows up and is a starter for you, but there are going to be names that get added in at key positions here. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets sit here and Hassan's not there and it's, 10 days before the start of the regular season that they're like, oh, hey, this guy just got cut from Denver or Carolina. Come on home. Yeah. So yeah, I hope this is the last twist that we have to talk about the Haasan Reddick situation. It has given us something to talk about through camp.
Yeah, we'll see you in 7 days.
I will say, and I'm sure anybody listening probably feels the same way too. Like we have been very much hitting just like the same few things all preseason. Like there hasn't been a ton of drama. It's been how do the rookies look?
Yeah.
What's going on with Haasan Reddick?
How's the edge going to look?
Yeah. And then kicking 5 field goals against the Panthers. But hopefully to finish things up until the start of the regular season, we'll have a nice show with the AFC East boys, get Scott and Mike in here and talk the division a little bit. Do our full predictions as well too for the season. We haven't really done any of that. We can talk some gambling stuff, some props that we like. So yeah, I think training camp, we've been focusing on a lot of the same things, but as we continue on and finish up to the regular season, I think we'll get a little bit more different conversations going as well too, which will be nice. Oh, last thing. The Jets just absolutely smoked the Giants in day 1 of their joint practices, and that's always just fun to talk about. Just destroyed them both sides of the ball.
Yeah. Not surprising, I would say. I mean, Garrett Wilson's been just destroying every team we've gone against. I was thinking today that like the Jets, you basically play the same people every preseason, right? And the Jets have the Commanders, the Panthers, and the Giants. I'm a little bummed that those are the 3 teams that we're doing joint practices with, because I'd like to see, some more talent out there, but always good to see. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers and our O-line and Garrett Wilson and our running backs can all be healthy and out there on the field together, you really do.
Special season.
You see little ways that that's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it should be fun. Fun.
Awesome. Well, that'll wrap it up for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, listening to Keeping Up with the New York Jets. On our socials at KUWTNYJ, Teddy is at Teddy Huncho. I am at Spring Blake. We'll talk to you next week with potentially a couple of more guests. We love you. We appreciate you. Peace.